all four of you all here today, and I'm excited to hear all of your perspectives. So PJ, take it away.
All right. So first, I guess we're just gonna have everyone go around real fast. Just give a quick intro of yourself. So as Syke said, I'm PJ. I'm with 3538. I like to tell people I am 99% of a therapist. I'm just finishing up my final internship now. So my focus is on mental health in teenagers and adolescents. So my involvement at first has always sort of been driven by that.
I'll go. I'm Kristine. I'm Kristine Atiyeh. I'm a mentor on Team 125, the Neutrons. I'm also an elementary art teacher, so to hear that PJ is 99% done with becoming like a amazing licensed therapist to be working with students, congratulations, PJ. That's such hard work and such needed hard work. So thank you for doing that. I'm excited to be on tonight. Thanks for having us.
And I'm Frank Merrick. I'm the director of First Robotics Competition. I started with First back in 2003 as a mentor on Team 131 Chaos out of Manchester, New Hampshire. And in 2008, I joined the staff, and I'm excited to be here as well.
I'm Livy. I'm a senior in high school, and I'm the captain of 1678.
What I think is really cool about this panel, what we really liked putting it together, what it kind of all fell together in a lot of ways, is we kind of have people from all different levels of first here, which is really cool. So we got a student, we've got a couple mentors, then Frank from HQ, which is incredibly intimidating when I found out he wanted to be on this panel. So, but very excited to have sort of these three sort of varied perspectives, because I think that's really important to have. So kind of I guess my first question I want to ask is we'll talk about what do you guys do to try to remain mentally healthy? Like what do you do during a busy season, during a busy work life? What are your guys' standard self-care routines?
Well, if we're looking at like a typical, I guess FRC season, it's definitely, even without the bag, I will say this past season, it's a lot, especially for students. I literally can't imagine Livy being a high school student right now, even pre-pandemic. I think that the expectations of students now is incredibly high. And I think that even as like young adults, we tend to put a lot of pressure on ourselves. So I know on our team with the Neutrons, we really try to be very just like open with each other about like, okay, I know that everybody's like super excited to be here right now, but like I just taught like 300 elementary students. So like, here's my patience limit and you're meeting it. And like that, at least as crazy as it sounds, and it may be a little abrasive for people who aren't, used to us, it at least opens up this like wall of like, I need to like put on this show for, my students to be like, she's got it together. Like it's a good, I don't know, openness, I guess, that we have on our team, where we kind of let each other know like where we are when we are meeting with each other. And even now, remotely, when we meet over Zoom and communicate over Slack, we try to preface our workload with like, how are you all doing? Like, how's everything going? And we do that frequently during in-person builds too, because it's a lot. And I mean, we're all human. We're all like learning our new thresholds for like workloads, but for us, it's really about being like direct as mentors, so students can feel comfortable also being like, I'm really not in a good place right now, or like I really need a break, or I need to go eat before I go do this thing. So communication and like openness has always been kind of our team self-care, and like our way to keep things, I don't know, real, as the kids say, or 100. Is that? Yeah,
are the kids still saying
that's
that?
what we
I'm
do
not
on
sure.
125. Yeah. Is that the hip word?
All right. How about you, Livy, or Frank, whoever was about to talk?
I was just going to say, I think that's so important what you're saying, Kristine, about being open about the place where you are. And I know that can be hard for folks as well. and I think it's important to ask, if you're if you're with someone that you've, pretty well and they are not themselves, I think it's a great question to reach out and say, hey, is there, do you need some time? You having a bad day? Is there something going on? And I think not everyone would, maybe not everyone is inclined to respond to that, but it just showing that you care, I think, is important, even if you can't, if the person themselves is in a place where they feel like talking. Um, I know, PJ, when you asked, kind of what we do with the stresses of the season and so forth, I consider myself an introvert, so many times I recharge by being alone, and just kind of getting away from everyone and shutting things off. But at the same time, I do enjoy being with my friends. And in these days of COVID, I've got a couple groups that I play games with online, and it's terrific to talk to them if it's just a couple hours a week and fool around and play a game online. For me, that's it's one of it's the highlight of my week, in these days.
Mhm. And then Livy, our resident high schooler who's going through, I don't know, is your school, are you guys out online or hybrid, or are you in person?
Yeah, we're completely online, probably
Okay.
at least for all of this semester.
How have you been dealing with that?
Um, it's been okay. It's a bit of a struggle for sure. It's kind of hard to get used to, especially like going from the activity of, spending 25 hours plus at robotics a week to, sitting in this chair for like 10 hours straight. Um, but it's going okay, I'd say.
Okay. Yeah, and so, and what do you do like during build season, crazy build season times? What do you do, or is there anything specifically you guys do on Citrus that kind of helps?
Mhm. Yeah, I think in a normal season, for me personally, what I kind of try to keep going is kind of a sense of perspective. So like especially for me, I've been the driver for the robot for a couple of years now, and so I have to spend a lot of extra time practicing driving the robot. And so I kind of have to keep myself in check and like remember, like I do have to focus on school. I do need to spend time with other people. And then also recognizing like if I'm spending so much time, practicing driving the robot, for example, I can't be hard on myself if I feel like I need to take a break or take half a day off from a weekend meeting or something like that, because like my contributions to the team are not measured in how much time I spend. It's like the quality of the time I spend there. So if I kind of spread myself too thin with all my activities, it puts a toll on me, and it also probably kind of lowers all my productivity in school and for robotics.
Yeah,
I'm
and I think
always
it's
blown away by the answers that Citrus students give, because like you get it. And I I just want to say that, Livy, like the fact that you are still in high school blows my mind. Last year, when you were working with some of our Neutron students to like review some of their work, I literally had to ask Kelly, who's an alumni of 1678, like, wait, really? She's still on the team? Kudos to you for being able to at least recognize like that if you are giving a ton of effort in one place, like you're going to have to make compromises, and that doesn't mean it's forever, but like that perspective point that you made, because it's not only like that little perspective for your like, individualized tasks, but the overall perspective is like, how is that impacting X, Y, and Z is something that even adults are not able to have the forethought or the like patience and like planning to be able to even think that way. So like the fact that you as a student leader on your team are able to frame your mindset that way is setting everybody else up for like at least the ability to follow the path of success in that like thought process. And like having somebody on the team that's either a student or adult that like can think that way to some capacity is such an asset. Like that's not something that you can just like read the directions on how to do and then implement it. It's like something that has to be genuinely like deep rooted into at least one or two people, and then to get other people to buy into it. So like kudos to you, and that definitely speaks to like the success that you guys have like annually, and how like your students, you guys are so able to be independent and leaders on your team, because you're able to kind of look at the perspective of things. Like that's pretty remarkable. because that's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, is like trying to look at like the perspective, like where are we right now in like compared to what we think we should be doing, like how are we measuring our success like based on the circumstances that we have. Because I think like one common theme that I've heard in a lot of these different workshops today is like, how do we like kind of work with the circumstances we have and make the best of it based on like the things that our teams, like that each of our teams can do. So I think like the thing that you just talked about is something that any team can do, regardless of like your circumstances or like skill sets or, you know, money or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, and I really liked the part was, you know, it's the quality of your time, not the quantity of your time, and that's just profound in a way to me. It's something it took me a long time to figure that out. I used to be like, oh, I have to be here every day, you know, you have to be doing this, you have to be doing that, and that's just not healthy for anyone. And
Livy, do you get a lot of students to like kind of buy into that idea of like your quality versus quantity, I guess? Like, because it seems to be like a really just kind of like a cultural thing among your team, like quality over quantity in terms of like what you're doing. Like, would you tell a student, like, if you're really not like in the zone right now for whatever task you're doing, like find something that you could put like better quality into rather than like just sitting and doing this thing for 30 minutes or whatever?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's definitely something that the team as a whole has been taking steps towards. Like for instance, this year we've added kind of a whole new section to our team handbook about what we call mental health days. So kind of regarding what I mentioned earlier with sort of like there, it almost feels, especially to high school students, I find like there's a bit of a stigma around taking a break from robotics or not showing up to every meeting because that means you're not committed enough because everyone else is. And so we're really trying to shift people's perspective and kind of like expressly tell them like you can take days off and it will not harm you in any way. And in fact, we actively encourage it. If you ever feel like you need some time off, there doesn't even need to be a reason, and we'll accept that. So we're definitely trying to kind of encourage people to be more comfortable with spending their time in a way that they're happy with and they don't feel like kind of at the back of their mind like they're forced to be here.
So there was some concern when we eliminated stop build day that teams would be burning themselves out. So Livy and Kristine, did you find yourselves making any adjustment with the elimination of stop build day to ease off on schedules or anything
Yeah,
along those
I know our
lines?
team, we ended up really shifting our kind of like what our schedule would be. And part of that was because we had just changed build sites, but part of it was also we were, as a team, we committed to saying, okay, if we're still going to kind of follow this general plan that we typically would, because if we don't have anything like any sort of time frame for ourselves, you're just going to burn yourselves out. Like it, our team would not like, and I know Olivia's would be the same. You're not just going to be like, we're done, check, like put the robot in the back of the trailer, we're good to go. It would be like, we're staying here forever.
Yeah.
So we did set boundaries, and that I think was really good. They were boundaries that were kind of connected with benchmarks, and it definitely helped. I think the thing that was tricky was like buying into that like idea of like, okay, this is a benchmark, we're good, like we're going to move on to this next thing, knowing though that like the option of like constantly working was there. But I think holding ourselves to saying like this is our stop build day like kind of kept us from getting a little too crazy. It was a big team, it was a team commitment to saying this is our like shut off time, that allowed us to not totally burn out.
Yeah, I think for 1678, it wasn't as much like we have the same amount of work that we're stretching into a larger time. Rather, it was kind of like we're going to keep the same pace of work until when stop build day normally would be, and then continue past that at that pace. But like the elimination of stop build day, I think what was really great about it is kind of there was no crunch time where you feel like the panic of the deadline approaching. And so like I remember my first few years before stop build day, like the last week and a half before stop build day would be like frantic, like staying at the shop super late, coming in after school, coming in during lunch. And it definitely didn't feel as rushed this year. Like maybe it was mentioned a couple times, but everyone was like, there's no stop build. We can keep working until our competition. And then also the advantage of knowing we don't have to convert all these changes we're doing from our practice robot onto our competition robot in 3 hours in our pit. We can just keep improving our competition robot. And I think that was also kind of a big stress reliever.
I would totally agree with you on that. I think the biggest factor was that component Livy was just talking about, like not worrying and having to plan and compromise and like just compromise either time, money, sanity, or whatever between events to get like your practice robot or whatever thing like you were bringing to like pray and like assemble at your event. As like a mentor that helps prepare stuff, like obviously for events, and watching, you know, like our students try to like throw together like, okay, we finally just got this working, like, and have no time in between to practice or anything. Like, I think the thing that we committed to was that the time that we would typically spend on our like practice robot, which was, I mean, it was a drive base and then some other stuff, it was never very good, but we agreed that like that time is going to be used like driving time, because that was something we never had without having a second robot. So I think getting the team to be excited about being able to practice and having the opportunity like to do that, and it was definitely the motivator to like stay on track and stay on pace, like Livy was saying.
Yeah, and I'll throw in my 2 cents. This was I had an interesting perspective because this was my first year mentoring 3538, and then I hadn't mentored for a couple years before that. So I can't speak to how different it was this year from last year on 3538. So I'm comparing between 2 different teams. But I know we were kind of the same way, where it was like we had the traditional stop build day sort of in our mind as like we want to have something functional by then. But if there was that spillover time, like you said, like if there's issues, it was a little like we were competing week 1, so that adds like, so we needed something still by the end of stop build day. It's not like we were not competing until 4 or 5, but it definitely felt, from what the other mentors I talked to, it was definitely more chill. It gave kids more time to take those mental health days, take those mental health breaks, where it was like if they had too much homework or they were swamped or whatever, they could say, I can't be there. It was like, fine, because we weren't trying to cram something into a bag at the last second. So it was definitely, I think it was definitely a positive. It's really good to hear that was a concern at HQ as well. Like just the fact that it was in the conversation.
It absolutely was a concern, and it was a long drive in getting us to eliminate stop build day. I don't want to digress on a whole separate conversation, but certainly we wanted to take that all into account. It's actually a sort of stress levels on teams it's a constant source of, I'll say, a constant source of discussion in HQ, because we know that FRC is a challenging program, and it's intended to be challenging. It's supposed to be challenging, but is not supposed to grind you down. And we have to kind of find that. We have to work to find that balance. And of course, we count on teams to make their own decisions in terms of how far do they, want to push themselves. But certainly we don't want anyone to push themselves to the point where they're being unhealthy. And I'm a big believer in the concept that first should not be the only thing that you do. Whether you're a student or a mentor, it should not be the only thing you do besides school or besides work. Hobbies are great. Go spend some time with friends. Don't make first kind of the only thing that you do. It's a great program, but it really work to get some variety in your life. I think that can add a lot of spice, as they say.
I think one unexpected thing that kind of eliminating bag day opened up for students that I noticed and was relieved to see is that students that typically would work with me on award submissions that wanted to be more involved with the robot were able to, because they were able to like really divide up their like in-person robotics time to be either like it didn't have to be all in on one or the other for once, because they had more opportunity to keep working on the robot. It wasn't locked away in a bag like between events. Well, we didn't really make it to any events, but it was never put into a bag. So our students,
you almost did though. You were on the
yeah,
bus, right?
we were in New Jersey. We didn't quite make it into the venue.
I'm
Which,
sorry about
hindsight,
that.
oh, it's fine.
I'm
Well, at least
you
apologizing
were-
for
I
believe-
coronavirus. Just to let everyone know, it was my fault. I'm very sorry.
I think
Oh, man.
Citrus went from California to St. Louis
Yep.
before they had their competition
Oh,
yanked
that's
out from
right.
under them.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
guys had a nice field trip.
Oh,
I was
goodness.
unclipping the radio from our robot to go program it when they made the announcement in the venue.
Oh gosh, that's
So
brutal.
hard.
Yeah.
That's why I'm real proud. I've got my collector's edition 2020 because we won our week one event. We've got our collector's edition
Nice.
2020 winner banner.
I'm glad we can laugh about it now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But let's
I
never
mean,
do that again.
well,
Okay.
I know.
Agreed.
This is the most spare time I've ever had in the last like 18 years, but it's wild. But I will say, like, it was nice to see that like it gave opportunity in other areas that I didn't expect it to. Because it was always gut wrenching to me to be like, we're gonna try to make it work this year where you can like, be all in on like awards and also like contribute to the robot, at least like either fabrication or assembly. And it like was never a good balance. But this year it definitely allowed students to kind of be more hands on with the robot when it got to that kind of final stage, because it wasn't like, don't break it, don't touch it, don't blow on it, it's already too heavy. Like, we were able to really just kind of manhandle the robot a little more this year, and it gave the students more ability to like, I don't know, get more time with it. So
That's great news.
Yeah, and it's really and that's why part of why I was really happy somebody from HQ decided to was wanted to come in, because it's really nice to hear that's a concern at the highest levels, like these stressors, this anxiety, I've always been the believer that HQ is looking out for our best interests, but it's nice to have that confirmation.
It is, because many of us, we've been on teams, we've been students on teams, we've been mentors on teams, or we've been educators, and we know what it's like to see the stress on students in the classroom. And actually, just within the last few weeks, so we did. I don't think this is aside. I think this is on topic. So a few years ago, I'm just trying to make sure I know we only have do not have much time here. A few years ago, we did a blog on suicide, in which we provided some resources for teams, and or for folks that felt they might sort of need to reach out. And we got a lot of positive response on that. And so probably about 3 weeks ago, maybe it was 4 weeks ago, I met with the executive leadership team in FIRST, and that's the president, Larry Cohen, like all the VPs and some other senior folks. And I said we wanted to, this was kind of an FRC, First Robotics Competition Initiative. I wanted to create a permanent home on firstinspires.org for mental health resources. And we are actually working on that. We got the go ahead. We're going to be putting that together. Looking at that, and of course we had the other very positive thing that's happened in the last few years, I think, was the addition of quiet rooms. Thanks with all the great help from the Compass Alliance, which I know you guys are familiar with.
I would say that was you're segueing into my next topic without me having to do it. It's almost like we planned this.
and probably the quiet rooms, I'll say, is probably the most successful, most well-received initiative we've done in the last few years or something. And just everyone was saying, boy, this is really needed and it's great. And is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. We ran one at championship. It was a little too small. It was a little too far out of the way, but it was our first time running it, but even the folks that went there used it. But we're recognizing that in the same way that that physical health of the people that are participating in FRC is important with all the kind of the physical safety things that we do. We also want to support mental health. And so we're right now we've you know, we're working on kind of the resources that we want to give availability to, and like we're not going to be giving sort of advice ourselves really so much because we're not the experts, right? I mean, there are people that do this, and PJ, it sounds like you're going to be doing this if you're not already as a living, and so we need experts like you know, to tell us what to do, because this isn't kind of our thing. But I'll tell you, we are looking right now, actually, we're hoping to find, in the same way that we partner with UL for sort of physical safety, we're looking for a partner to support sort of youth mental health. And now whether we're going to be able to find someone, or if we're going to be work on a kind of a partnership thing, but we're trying to make sure we're working with someone who knows what they're doing, so that when we put information out there, it's the right information. Because I'll tell you, folks, I don't know that folks maybe know this or don't know this, but anytime we hear of a student or a mentor or a volunteer passing within FRC, we write condolence letters. And sometimes we hear of students passing, and just looking at the obituary, you can tell that the circumstances under which that young person died, and it would be fine with me if I never had to sign one of those condolence letters again. I'm telling you, it's one of the hardest parts. It's one of the hardest parts of my job, and I can't count the number I've signed over the last few years. We need to do something, you know. And I think these little steps that we're taking here are going to help.
I will say this is probably the fastest growing like new thing that I've seen kind of take off in FRC specifically, and it's something that I think the students are able to take full kind of ownership in, really give their feedback and input on, and watch it kind of evolve to fit the needs of them and like the community. And it's been really great. And I think the exciting thing to hear, at least from me, about you guys making a official like First Inspires page to provide resources, is that it'll allow all of our teams around the world to be able to kind of find the best, like, you know, official resources in their area. Because one thing that we noticed on the Compass Alliance is when we were sourcing for like, you know, best kind of official either government or state, or, you know, like what there's like each team's school was either like using or advocating with, they were all very different and based on the needs of their own community, but they were all like fantastic. There was one specifically out of Australia. It's a program called Are You Okay? Like letter R, letter U, and then okay. And we loved their like infographics and just their like basics on like how do you start a conversation with somebody, because that we found was like kind of like the biggest thing. It's like we ask people to put their safety glasses on all the time. You know, we ask people to not run, and we all listen to it without, you know, like skipping a beat, but we don't ever really know the right way to not awkwardly be like, are you doing okay? Like, do you like need to go take a break? Like, how are you feeling right now? And for that to be like as important as like wear your safety glasses, if not more, in the eyes of like First and the people that work there and the people that volunteer all their time, it's really remarkable to see, because it's not an easy topic for anybody, especially I think for people in the tech and STEM industry where you're really focused all the time. You have to be on, and it's like there are rights and wrongs, and usually it's like get to that answer and that's it. So it's nice to see that we're giving students the skills and abilities, just like we would with like the robot part, to like figure out how to like best support themselves and each other.
I'll tell you, we're working on it really hard, and we're headed in the right direction. I don't think that these resources probably aren't imminent, you know, especially if we find we're looking for a partner that'll take some time to develop if we're able to find one. But boy, I would love to see something before kickoff now.
Anything helps.
Whether we can get that right. Anything can help, and we can certainly publish some basics without sort of a partner involved. The international aspect that you mentioned, Kristine, is also very important to us because it's, I mean, living in the U.S., it's easy to find U.S. Canadian kind of resources. There are some out there that are sort of multilingual, and that's definitely something we want to do. That what the resource that we are publishing, where it's not going to be just for English speakers, because we've got, I mean, countries in over 30 teams in over 30 countries.
Yeah, countries in over 30. I mean, that's probably true too to some capacity, like, with the way that everybody's operating now. But I will say too, like, I remember this past year, something that I saw at one of the events that did happen. I think it was the Monterey. No, it wasn't Monterey. It was one of the Mexico regionals, one of the new ones. And they had like the most epic quiet room outside. It was like nice tent. I was like, take me there now. I'm like freezing in New England. But I also know that there's a lot of like work being done on the ground with teams in Mexico that are like really ramping up their mental health resources for teams and like really pushing it, which I thought was so cool. Like that's probably one of my favorite parts of the Compass Alliance. And I know Livy's been able to like work on this too, because some of her students have translated things into like Mandarin and other things. And I'm like,
that's fantastic.
But being able to see just students and people from all over kind of like bring up like resources and ideas for like this one really common thing. It's really great.
It's well past the time we started talking about this more and providing help where we can, working with experts that know their stuff.
And
I
think that
and the stigma, and it's all down to a lot of it. It's like just erasing all the stigma around mental health, which I think is huge. And just having people, that's why I'm so appreciative, Frank, that you came on, because just seeing the people in these, like the people in the positions of authority, that's the word I'm looking like people in positions of authority, people in charge, being able to look up and say like, oh, like they're talking about it, that makes it okay for me to talk about it. And that's my biggest my biggest soapbox as a therapist is always just like, nothing's going to change if we don't talk about it and get it out there. And we need to push, like, and that's why, like, when I started seeing the quiet rooms pop up and stuff like that, I was so excited and so happy to see that kind of stuff was gaining traction. Like, and just the fact that when I did the workshop I just presented, I did it at Champs in 2019. Yeah, I did it at North Champs. And the fact that like I expected like 20 people to show up, and the room was like packed with people who wanted to hear about mental health.
Fantastic.
And it was just so amazing to like this, breaking this stigma is so huge. And I think that's, and it's hard. So I think there's no answer. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think the fact that like you're able, or you're willing to even like go and present about it at Champs, or even go on a fun show or host this webinar, like it's important for students and others to just like see people confidently talk about it, or even just talk about it. Like I know Karthik has talked about it a lot, or even Livy coming on and saying like, I'm aware that like this is going to be stressful, so I make sure that like I'm looking at it in a way that, or I operate in a way that's going to be best for me and my teammates. Like, it's one thing that I was like excited about with like Here For You in Quiet Rooms really picking up and like getting the Compass Alliance to like really engage with it, is for people to see like everybody manages like themselves and their experiences in different ways, and there's no necessarily like weird or wrong way. Like everybody has their own needs that like we need to meet internally, I guess, or like we need to understand how we operate and all that stuff in order to be successful. So for people, I think for students who may not be aware of like why they're feeling stressed out, or like they're encountering like all of these difficult things in a controlled environment without realizing like it's okay to like fail here because we'll help you through it. Like that was one of the biggest points that I think we were trying to get at. Like when we started quiet rooms, we were thinking about like what is the ultimate goal of this, because it's not just for a student that's stressed out. Like it could be for just about anybody, but like what is this like tool for? And our students talked about like that idea of self-regulation. Like we talk about it at the elementary level all the time with students, like what, zone are you in? Are you feeling red? Are you feeling yellow? Are you feeling green? Like, are you tired? But understanding like in the moment what's going on with you internally, and then figuring out what you need in order to be in a better place to like be successful. And that's a type of conversation that a lot of people never have until they have to figure it out on their own as an adult. But being able to watch students over time kind of develop skills to problem solve on their own, like, is a new thing that I'm able to start seeing in even some of our individual students, or even some of our alumni who like were involved with quiet rooms and stuff, that are kind of continuing that work personally. So I don't know, it's a bigger thing than just like robotic stuff, obviously. So seeing that headquarters understands that and like sees the need for it is really good. Because I remember, Frank, when you were talking about those condolence notes, like I distinctly remember at one point, I think it was in 2017, one of our students, middle of build season, peak of us getting our like baller robot done. His brother came running into our lab because he had to go and tell his little brother that his dad had died out of nowhere. And we were just like rug pulled out from under us. I remember emailing Lee Doucette, who is amazing at headquarters, to just ask, like, is there any guidance you have? Because his school is not going to do anything. Like, this was a school that was already tapped out with too many students in their guidance department, and their guidance department really wasn't doing students any favors. And unfortunately, at that time, it was like there was really no resources or anything that she could provide. And I said, I was like, I totally understand that you guys can only give so much guidance. I was like, but look, I'm like 28, and this kid, like we've mentored this family, and we need to know, like, if there's anything that you have that could help us help him. Like, so in my mind, like, I think back to that conversation, and I'm not excited about that, but like I'm hopeful that there'll be people that you'll be able to partner with that could help somebody like me or our students, like, that get into like these extreme situations, or even just these day-to-day, like, how do I best, like, take care of myself and my like mental health. So there's such a big spectrum that I think is going to cover.
Yeah. And then I know it's I've known it's been in HQ for a long time. Like I said, it's in 2018, so it was after I'd stopped mentoring for a bit. But the team I used to mentor, 910, we lost a student to suicide, and like the week of a competition, and Dr. Woody Flowers happened to be at the competition that weekend, and I had a very long conversation with him about mental health and just stuff like that. He was very passionate about mental health. We exchanged some books. I read a couple of the books you recommended, and just the exchange we had, and just and he made sure to go over to the team and he talked to all of them, saw how everybody was doing. And just like, that's like, not to, like, I don't want to like end this on a down note, but it's like, cause I know, like, that's probably one of my favorite FRC moments was just seeing how much Dr. Flowers cared enough to, like, he made sure all the kids, he asked them, they had made buttons with the kid's name on them. Like, Dr. Flowers wore one of those for the entire time he was at the event.
Wow.
And and he usually didn't wear buttons at that point. It was very because he didn't want to show, but he wore it like when he gave his opening remarks to the crowd. And so that redoubled my passion and my efforts in sort of the youth mental health field, because just like it's just see when you have people like that who can inspire and show, and it's so great to hear that HQ is trying to do even more to help kids or even mentors or adults who just don't know where to go.
I'm gonna real quick before we wrap up. So the other year, and I'm trying to think when this was. I think it was 2019 actually, which feels like it was forever ago. I was fortunate enough to give a presentation at I think it was the Community Partners Conference. I don't remember what the name of it was, but in New Hampshire, where a lot of the suppliers and a lot of the like regional directors and senior mentors came.
Yeah,
and
the community conference it's called.
Community conference, that's what it was.
Yeah.
So I was able to give a presentation with Jamie Luce, former FRC team advocate, who is very much responsible for a lot of the reason why quiet rooms are like in at events, especially at championships. But one of the parts of our presentation that I thought was like probably one of my favorite parts were some of the feedback quotes, or just quotes that people left on like Frank's blog posts or on Chief Delphi about quiet rooms. And a few of them, like, they were all over the place from different people, but some of them like really resonated. And for like my students who had kind of started with this idea of like, how can we help people on teams who don't feel like somebody is there for them, like we have mentors there for us, like what can we do? And I was like, all right, like let's think about this a little more. But watching them read the comments and like genuinely get choked up because they realized like, holy crap, like our idea helped, really is starting to help people. Like some of the quotes, I'm just going to rattle them off real quick. One of them was from a team coach on Chief Delphi, said, absolutely love this idea. As a past team member, mom of someone with autism, and current coach with 2 members on our team with sensory issues, this should be amazing. This one, like, just kind of sent chills up my spine. It was, as an alumni with a disability, it's about time. Everybody deserves a chance to be a part of FRC. However, competition is a sensory overload for all, let alone a sensitive teammate. Helped calm me down after the stress of leading scouting for over 60 people per day that we were there. That was from a student at the Buckeye Regional that year. So it's nice to see that like this one kind of like platform or tool for a lot of different people to access, like gave them the opportunity they needed in order to like participate and have a good experience like at and away from events. So I think that's like, hearing Frank talk about the push for a partner, in my mind, it goes back to that idea of like providing the best possible experience for students to have in this program. And like, this is the next step for that. It's like giving them the best possible, like controlled situation, again, like to develop skill sets to like be totally successful later on. The other thing that I thought was really cool in this presentation, because Jamie's really good at math and I'm not, she helped kind of do some number crunching between like the year that quiet rooms were started up until the end of 2019. So in 2018, there were quiet rooms at 12 events in 2 countries. And then there was a meet and greet with people at the Detroit Championships. And then in 2019, there were over 53 quiet rooms at events in 4 countries and at both championships. So it was 30% of the official FRC events in 2019 had quiet rooms, giving us 600% growth, which I was like, wait, Jamie, what? She was like, I do math. Like, so that was really cool to see that it grew so fast. And a lot of the like kind of roadblocks and not growing more were just like space issues, as many of us know at events that aren't at big fun places or outside, like in California, like they apparently have.
And we
Very
now
cool.
say that quiet rooms are actually mandated at every FRC event.
Mhm.
And so there are some outlying cases where you really can't have a space, but the default is you're going to have a quiet room.
That's so great. Well, unfortunately, we're just about out of time. I know it's late for us over here on the East Coast. So I'm going to throw it over to Pauline for some Beach Biz closing remarks, but thank you so much to the 3 of you for coming on and being on here tonight for all this important stuff.
You're so welcome. I certainly enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I know we learned a lot. Honestly, I felt very inspired listening to that. I was sitting on my desk taking notes. So thank you so much again for joining the panel.